a man who built a media empire from nothing, handing out newspapers on a Boston subway platform, sleeping on floors, eating nothing, just told the city that made him a household name that he's done, not angry, not impulsive, done. The math finally stopped working, and when someone worth $250 million publicly announces his company is walking out the door, the only question that matters is not why he's leaving, it's who else is right behind him. Hey everyone, welcome back. It's 2003. A kid from Swampscott, Massachusetts, son of a lawyer, son of a high school teacher, has just quit he owes $59,000 to credit card companies and $18,000 to his own father. He has $10,000 left. He uses that $10,000 to print a 4-page sports newspaper. He distributes it himself. On subway platforms, on street corners. In Boston, in the cold. He writes every word of it. His childhood friends write under fake names so it looks like he has a full staff, because he doesn't. He sleeps at his girlfriend's mother's house. For 6 years. The paper struggles. He doesn't quit. He pivots to the internet. He films himself. He reviews pizza. He yells at the camera. He builds a following that eventually numbers in the tens of millions. Major gaming company Penn Entertainment acquires a stake in the company, valuing it at $450 million. He buys it back. He moves some operations to a 30-3,000 square foot warehouse in Chicago's Fulton Market neighborhood, with a full-size basketball court inside, 12 podcast studios, and a commercial kitchen. He lands a Netflix deal worth 8 figures. He signs a wide-ranging partnership with Fox Sports. Then, on a Tuesday night in November 2025, New York City votes in a new mayor. And this man sits in front of a camera and says 3 words that a year later are no longer a threat, they're a plan. I hate the guy. I'm talking about Dave Portnoy, founder of Barstool Sports. El Presidente, a man worth an estimated $250 million who built every cent of it without inheritance, without a safety net, and without anyone's permission. Portnoy created Barstool in 2003 as a free newspaper on Boston transit platforms and turned it into one of the most influential digital media brands in the country. The company was valued at $606 million in 2023. It is currently headquartered in New York City, at 333 7th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, in a lease that runs through 2029, and in the months following Zohran Mamdani's election as mayor of New York City on November 4, 2025. Portnoy has made it unmistakably clear that when that lease expires, Barstool is not renewing. The talent is already leaving. The math is already done. But here's what nobody is telling you about this story. This isn't about Dave Portnoy's feelings. It isn't a grudge match. It isn't a culture war. It is arithmetic, specifically the arithmetic that results when a Democratic Socialist mayor proposes raising the city's corporate tax rate from 7.25% to 11.5%, matching the highest rate in the nation. Mamdani has also proposed increasing the city's business corporation tax on non-finance sectors from 8 stacked on top of the federal corporate rate of 21%. New York City businesses are already operating under the highest combined corporate tax burden in the country, over 37% in total. Mamdani's proposals don't just add to that number. They announce to every business owner with options that the number is about to get worse, and they say it loudly and unapologetically, and they post it on social media in front of a billionaire's penthouse on tax day. That announcement is why this story matters far more than any press release about a podcast moving to Chicago. So, whether you live in New York, work in media, work in finance, or just pay taxes anywhere in this country, what's unfolding right now in New York City matters to you. Because this pattern has a very predictable ending, and we've seen it play out before. This is New York Reports, and this is where we follow the money. Subscribe and hit that like button if you want more of this. And here's my question for the comments. At what point does a city's tax policy stop being progressive and start being self-destructive? Drop it below. Let's get into it. First, let's understand who Dave Portnoy actually is. Because the name might not be familiar to everyone, and it absolutely should be. He was born on March 22, 1977, in Salem, Massachusetts, and raised in Swampscott. His father was a lawyer. His mother taught high school. He graduated from the University of Michigan in 1999 with a degree in education, took a job at Yankee Group, an IT market research firm in Boston, and earned about $80,000 a year. He quit. He filed for bankruptcy in 2004. He launched Barstool as a free print newspaper that he handed out personally at Boston transit stops. The early years were a genuine grind. He wrote everything. He worked weekends. He put photos on the front page that generated traffic. He moved to the internet in 2007. He launched Barstool New York in 2009. He stopped printing altogether in 2010 and went fully digital. And then, slowly, the audience grew into something massive. Pardon My Take became one of the most downloaded sports podcasts in the country. Call Her Daddy launched on Barstool before Alex Cooper took it to Spotify for over $60 million. The brand expanded into merchandise, live events, food companies, and sports betting. In January 2020, Penn National Gaming acquired a 36% stake at a $450 million valuation. By August 2022, Penn had bought the whole company. And then, on August 8, 2023, Dave Portnoy bought it back. 100%. He did it the first time from nothing. He did it the second time on his own terms. And then Zohran Mamdani got elected mayor of New York City, and Portnoy started doing the math. Here is what happened. In late October 2025, just days before the New York City mayoral election, Portnoy appeared on a Barstool livestream. An audience member asked him to consider closing the New York City office. He said, and this is a direct quote, "Honestly, I've given that a lot of thought, and he's definitely going to win." He said he'd asked his finance guy to start looking at properties elsewhere. He mentioned Hoboken. He mentioned Jersey City. He said, and again, this is verbatim, "I may close the New York office." On November 4, 2025, Mamdani won. Portnoy went on X and wrote, "But if this is what the people of NYC want, then so be it. Thank God I don't live there anymore." The official framing, from Mamdani's camp and from his supporters, has been consistent. This is performative. These are threats, not plans. Portnoy has a lease through 2029. Nobody's actually going anywhere. But here's the thing about that framing. The talent is already moving. Barstool personality Brianna Confrey LaPaglia announced in December 2025 that she is buying a property in Florida and relocating, citing the cost savings from zero state income tax. Dave Portnoy himself purchased a $27.75 million mansion in Islamorada, Florida, setting a record sale for the Keys. He already owned a waterfront property in Miami purchased in 2021. The lease running through 2029 is not a contradiction of his intentions. It is the countdown clock. And by July 2026, Portnoy has escalated further, appearing on Fox News with Jesse Waters to float the idea of running for mayor against Mamdani himself, accusing him of turning New York into a socialist, communist, anti-American city, one lease extension away from a decision, and that extension is not coming. This is not a solo act. The pattern is everywhere. Ken Griffin built Citadel into one of the largest hedge funds on the planet from his base in Chicago. He watched Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Lori Lightfoot raise taxes and increase regulations. And in 2022, he moved Citadel's headquarters from Chicago to Miami. He told Bloomberg that watching what Mamdani is doing to New York City is triggering the trauma I went through in Chicago. After Mamdani filmed a video in front of Griffin's $238 million Manhattan penthouse on April 15, 2026, tax day, to promote his Pi de Terra luxury property tax, Griffin announced he was halting New York expansion plans and doubling down on Miami. His team filed plans for a 300-unit residential tower and a 1,400-space parking garage on Citadel's Brickell campus, he told CNBC. "We will add far more jobs in Miami over the next decade, as an immediate and direct consequence of the mayor's poor decision." Apollo Global Management, a $900 billion asset manager, announced plans to open a second headquarters in either Florida or Texas, with 1,000 employees. The CEO of the Partnership for New York City confirmed that several major New York City brands that have been headquartered here for 100 years are down the road of leaving. Ken Griffin left Chicago. Apollo is leaving New York, and Barstool's lease runs out in 2029. All gone. All landing in states with no income tax or friendlier regulation. The city that made them is waving them goodbye. When Ken Griffin criticized Mamdani publicly at the Milken Global Conference in May 2026, the mayor's response was a dodge. When Griffin announced Citadel was halting New York expansion, Mamdani said, paraphrased by the New York Post, that Griffin's status as a major employer in the city does not negate the fact that our tax system is fundamentally broken. When Apollo announced it was looking at Florida and Texas, Mamdani's answer was the same ideological anchor. The affordability crisis is real, and successful businesses need to understand that the city cannot subsidize their presence. When asked whether he feared losing businesses, Mamdani told ABC's Good Morning America, "What I've heard from a number of business leaders is that the affordability crisis is also affecting their ability to attract and retain talent." Read that again. His answer to companies leaving over his proposed tax increases is that the tax increases are actually good for the companies. New York City Council member and Mamdani ally Shahana Hanif has echoed the party line. The real threat to New York's business community is not taxation, it is inequality. Governor Kathy Hochul, who faces re-election in 2026 and has shown some resistance to Mamdani's tax proposals, has offered the quietest possible pushback, saying the state needs to strike a balance. She did not use the word exodus. She did not name a single company that was leaving. That was the official response. That is what passing for leadership looks like right now in Albany. So, let's follow the money. Because this is where the real story lives. New York City businesses currently face a combined corporate tax burden, federal, state, and local, of over 37%. That is the highest in the nation. Mamdani's proposal raises the city's non-finance corporate tax from 8.85 to 10.62%. On financial firms, from 9 to 10.8%. The state's top corporate rate would climb from 7.25 to 11.5%, matching New Jersey, which has been ranked last in regional cost competitiveness by its own Business and Industry Association for 7 consecutive years. New Jersey lost 7 of the 22 Fortune 500 companies headquartered there since 2015. Meanwhile, Florida has a 5.5% corporate tax rate and 0 state income tax. Texas has 0 corporate income tax and 0 personal income tax. Dozens of New York companies filed to expand or relocate to Florida in the months immediately following the November 2025 mayoral election. Stack that on top of the fact that as of 2022, New York City had already shrunk from 7% of the nation's millionaires to 4%, a slide that began a full decade before Mamdani took office. And in the second quarter of the most recent fiscal year, New York City's Economic Development Corporation reported the weakest quarter for business formation since the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. More than 8,400 employers closed or departed. 3,500 new ones opened. Net result, nearly 5,000 businesses gone in a single quarter. For a media company managing a multi-hundred-million-dollar valuation, that isn't ideology, that's arithmetic. Now, let's talk about the people this actually touches, because it's never really the executives who feel it first. I'll call her Linda. Not her real name, but her situation is real for thousands of people across New York City. Linda is 31 years old. She's a producer, a junior one at a mid-sized digital media company on the west side of Manhattan. She moved to New York from Ohio 6 years ago because this was where the jobs were. She works on podcast content. She makes $72,000 a year before taxes. She has 2 roommates. She doesn't own anything. She's been reading the trades. She knows her company's executives are looking at options. She's watched a senior producer she admires quietly start taking calls from a production house in Nashville. She's attended to all hands meetings in the past year, where leadership assured everyone things were fine. She's not sure she believes them anymore. Linda is not losing her job this month. She hasn't been laid off, but she's watching the floor get a little thinner every single year, and she knows exactly what that eventually leads to. And here's what should stop every single person watching this cold. This isn't a Barstool story. This isn't even a New York City story. This is a playbook. California has been running the same script for a decade. The state's top marginal income tax rate sits at 13.3%, the highest in the nation. Between 2020 and 2022, California led the country in net outmigration of residents. Oracle relocated its headquarters to Texas. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise moved to Houston. Charles Schwab moved to Westlake, Texas. Illinois, as mentioned, has lost population every year for a decade. Connecticut's pension crisis, driven in part by a shrinking high-earner base, sits at an unfunded liability of over $35 billion. The formula is always the same. High taxes, heavy regulation, political leaders who treat successful people as adversaries instead of partners, and then genuine shock when those people start doing the math and choosing somewhere else. Go back to that subway platform in Boston. A guy nobody has ever heard of, handing out a 4-page newspaper he wrote himself, trying to get strangers to take a free copy. That man spent 20 years building something in this media ecosystem, including more than a decade in New York City, generating jobs, generating content, generating tax revenue, generating culture. And now, he's standing outside that same city, telling Fox News he's considering running for mayor against the man currently running it, not because he wants the job, because the math stopped working, and because someone who built everything from nothing has a particular sensitivity to the feeling of watching something get dismantled piece by piece. That's not a personality clash. That's not a culture war. The Boston subway platform, the bankruptcy filing, the decade of Olin risk, it all pointed toward exactly this moment. The decision was made the day the election results came in. We're just watching it play out now. Dave Portnoy is not the problem. Dave Portnoy is the warning. His lease runs through 2029. In the meantime, his talent is relocating to Florida. His operations have already partially migrated to Chicago, and he has publicly stated, on camera, that the day the lease expires, the New York chapter of Barstool Sports is over. Mayor Mamdani's response has been, essentially, a philosophical pivot. Businesses aren't leaving because of taxes. They're leaving because the city isn't affordable enough, which is what the taxes are meant to fix. The data contradicts this. New York City lost nearly 5,000 net businesses in a single quarter in early 2026. Kent Griffin is building a new campus in Miami. Apollo is hiring 1,000 people for a new southern headquarters. And Dave Portnoy is on Fox News exploring a mayoral run. Dave Portnoy isn't the problem. Dave Portnoy is the warning. And in New York City right now, the only official response seems to be a tax day video outside a billionaire's penthouse and a smile. That's not policy. That's New York City choosing not to compete.